Right, hello guys and welcome back. Just last weekend, the epic version of the Desert Perpetual raid was finally released, and alongside some significant tweaks to the base 3 encounters, added an entirely new one in the form of Koregos Fractured in Time, stunting many teams running it on contest, ours included, and once all was said and done, I walked away realizing I had just experienced one of, if not the best pieces of endgame content that Bungie has ever created. And today, it is my mission to teach you everything you need to know about how to tackle this challenge yourself, going over the optimal strategies and damage rotations to make your time here as efficient as possible. And full disclosure, today's guide is going to assume you already know the mechanics for the regular difficulty of the raid, which of course isn't possible for the final encounter, but for Epoptes, Agraios, and Iatros, I'm assuming you already know how their normal versions work. But if you don't, feel free to check out my no BS guide for the normal version first, then come back here. I also want to spend a significant portion of time on the final encounter because, yeah, time travel. Anyway, we'll get there soon enough, and if you end up finding today's guide helpful in any way, then a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. Once again, the epic version of the raid allows you to choose where you want to go first, and unlike the normal version, the order in which you choose your bosses actually has significant ramifications for each subsequent encounter, including the final boss as well. Reason being, with each boss you defeat, the next one will inherit certain attacks from the previous. For example, if you decided to tackle Epoptes first and Agraios second, detained bugs will begin spawning during the Agraios fight. And by the way, the detained bugs are a new addition specifically to the Epoptes fight. Similarly, if you went to Agraios first, then Iatros, good luck dodging the variable elimination laser during DPS on Iatros. Yeah, this raid really doesn't mess around. So because of this, an optimal order does indeed present itself, with my recommendation being Epoptes first, then Agraios, then Iatros, which also affects how certain parts of the final encounter function. But more on that later. For now, let's begin with the epic variant of Epoptes. So, the Epoptes fight has changed in basically just one significant way, and that is that the flow of information is briefly halted by an additional eye-breaking mechanism in the central arena. And what I mean by that is, in the normal version of this encounter, right room players call what eyes to shoot for the left room players and vice versa. But this time, in the epic version, the information that the right room gets must first get filtered through the middle before it can reach the left side, and vice versa, because both of the inside room players will now see 2 lit eyes rather than 1. And because we're dealing with a lot more information now, I highly encourage players to refer to these eyes numerically rather than directionally, labeled like so. Trust me, it helps. Shifting over to middle, there are now 2 new obelisks containing eyes that the mid players can see, one on the uppermost stone structure on the left, and another on the side of the building on the right. And what you're going to need now is have 2 people read these sets of eyes as well. So once the encounter begins, assign 2 inside room players like usual, but have them buff alongside another mid room player whose job is to observe these specific obelisks. The way the flow of information works now is that if inside right calls 3 and 4, the mid right player breaks 3 and 4 on their eyes, and within a couple of seconds, one of the 2 eyes they shot will begin glowing white, which in this example is 3. This right here is the eye that the mid player should now be calling to the left inside room for them to break on their shield. So in essence, each side room player calls out 2 eyes, but they don't know which one is correct for the opposite side to break. So that's why the mid players are required to filter the information and determine which one is correct. It basically adds an extra step to how the encounter already functions, and yeah, it's pretty confusing, but if there's anything you can take away from this is that it does indeed behave identically to the original in terms of the end goal, breaking eyes, except the process of doing so requires a little extra work and verification. The interrupt phase works like always. Call out the blank eye for your side to break on their triangular section, and then repeat the normal phase again until all eyes are broken. The epic version also adds a rather annoying enemy flying seeker which detains you if caught by the blast. And keep in mind, you cannot break yourself out of it, only your teammates can, so be sure to call that out if you end up detained. The spawn trigger for these is every time you break an eye on the inside rooms, and yes, they are present within said rooms as well, and a Cyclops, because why not? After you make it to DPS, the only difference here is that the phase begins almost immediately rather than choosing 2 players to be shield breakers. But when 2 players are chosen, they are instead teleported into each of the side rooms and must break the eyes on each of the Hydras present. And once done, will be teleported back to the middle where they'll have to break 2 shields instead of just 1. But the nice part is that the damage phase is significantly longer in the epic version of this fight. And at least on normal mode, with the right setup, you can easily one phase this boss. Here's how. You're going to want at least 1 or 2 wells, then as many many damage supers as you can get, 1 tractor cannon, then have the remaining players on Finality's Auger with Mint Retrograde and SMG swapping. I recommend either Antedate with Rewind Target Lock, Yeartide Apex with Attrition Orbs Chaos Reshaped, or Mida Minitool with Attrition Orbs Aggregate Charge. If you don't have Finality's Auger, Anarchy Sniper is also okay, and even Thunderlord can get the job done. Just make sure you have any form of decent total damage and you should be okay. After dealing with Epoptes, our next target is Agraios. Out of all the non-final boss encounters, Agraios is the one which has changed the least when compared to its normal mode counterpart. Oh, and you might notice he has a final stand now. More on that in a moment though. In the epic version, each of the alignment pylons and alignment rings have a chronon canister attached to them, and for the pylons, the color within the canister represents what color chronon the nearest Minotaur spawn is going to drop, and for the rings, the canisters will all be initially empty. And basically, what this means is that the rings themselves will now only accept a certain colored chronon. If you input a different color to the one it needs, you'll die. So how do we find out the color of the rings? Well, you now have a new spinning ring above the central monument, which will make it so whenever you run through it while holding a chronon, you will temporarily be granted the vision to see which of the 5 accelerator rings pertain to that color. And in this example, I inputted a red chronon, and from that I can see that ring 4 only is red. Do this for all 3 colors, or 2, and work out the last by process of elimination, and you'll now know the color of each and every ring. And yes, it does help to type these out in chat to keep track of the information. A small caveat is that at any given time, only 2 colors are able to spawn at once, and the only way to rotate this is by depositing more chronons into the central ring. So if blue and white ones are currently spawning, inputting a white chronon into the ring will make blue and red chronons spawn, because the color you input into the ring makes it so the other 2 colors other than it begin spawning. After that, the process remains the same. Align a boss, get the calls for the bad portal, deposit the correct colored chronons in the corresponding rings, which by the way do in fact remain the same color throughout the duration of a phase, charge the detain bubble, and initiate damage. The first half of damage is the same as before. The boss jumps down, you get around 15 seconds of damage, and then he TPs out again. But this time, instead of coming back down, the boss will randomly teleport between the topmost platforms and never come back down. And as a result, long-range options like Grand Overture or again Finality's Auger work best. And as for the final stand, it's pretty simple. As soon as you pass the threshold, 3 copies of the boss will teleport down to ground level, and the only way to damage them is by holding the buff with the matching temporality. So when final stand hits, be sure to split your group 2-2-2 and buff on each of the mid plates quickly. Then spread out and look for the copy of the boss that your buff pertains to. Once you find it, defeat the boss, which by the way, despite being on 1 HP, has a deceiving amount of health, and once all 3 copies are dead, the middle one becomes damageable once again, and with any luck, you'll end him there and then. Up next, we have my personal favorite of the base 3 encounters, Iatros. Unlike Agraios, Iatros has changed quite a bit and requires a lot more careful coordination. For starters, the ring above the hourglass no longer tells you the color of it. You need to find it yourself, and to do that, conveniently scattered around the arena are pools of the temporal oculus buff from the OG Koregos fight, and stepping within them will reveal the color of the ring above the hourglass for a short period of time. And just like Agraios, all 3 colored chronons are now present in the encounter, with another key difference here being that even if you're already holding one, you can swap it to a different color should you feel the need to by simply interacting with another. So to start with, grab the central temporal oculus and read the initial color of the ring, because again, just like OG Koregos, depositing a chronon within it will make the ring change color about 5 seconds later. So basically, your squad needs to get into pairs and deposit chronons as a pair with like a 3-2-1 or something, then the color changes, then you pick up oculus again to read the new color, and so on. Repeat until the hourglass is full, and take note in chat or on a piece of paper the order of the colors, because this order is cyclic and repeats over and over. So if the rotation for a given phase was white, blue, red, after red has been dunked, it's back to white again, then blue, then red, then white, and so on, which is handy for your chronon runners. The other significant change is that you can no longer break the boxes to create the climbing platforms without a buff. And the way this works now is that all 3 box players need to simultaneously stand on the 3 buff plates in order to all receive either constant, absolute, or cyclical temporality. But wait, there's more. Rather than shooting the boxes 1 level at a time, you must instead shoot a certain combination of boxes that pertain to the colors shown off by a new array of chronon canisters. And the way this works is like so. Beneath the start of the platforms, 3 canisters will show up with a colored chronon inside. In this example, we have 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 white. And I'm just going to tell you this now, the bottom row of boxes are represented by red, the middle row by white, and the top row by blue, meaning that with this particular particular combination of canisters, the game wants us to shoot one bottom, one middle, and one top box. And to add yet another layer of complexity, each of the 3 box columns can only be shot by a specific temporality buff. Right side can only be shot by cyclical, far left can only be shot by constant, and spawn can only be shot by absolute. What's more, after each successful box break, the game has a chance to split who has what buff. So I could go from having cyclical to absolute, meaning that I'm forced to shoot spawn boxes instead of right. And yeah, this is seriously a bit of a brain twister to get your head around, but here's the simplest way I found to go about it. Have one of your box players be a topmost breaker, another be the bottommost breaker, then the third be a flex. What this means is that if you have a configuration such as 2 white, 1 red, which is 2 middle and 1 bottom box, your top player shoots a middle box, your bottom player shoots a bottom box, and your flex also shoots a middle box. That way, no comms are required and you can adjust to each situation. There are other ways to do it, such as adhering to the callouts of the colors/positions given by your climber, for example, and assign boxes based on the order they called out, or you could just freestyle it and call what you're breaking on the fly. The key things to be aware of are what colors pertain to what levels, which again, red is bottoms, white is middles, and blue is tops, as well as which buff can shoot which towers, which again, far left is constant, spawn is absolute, and right is cyclical. One last thing, the diastole buff now suspends you if you're caught on the ground while it pulses, so maybe don't do that. Damage-wise, again, this fight can be trivialized with Finality's Augur and Mint, but the catch here is that because we did Agraios second, you'll have to deal with the variable laser during damage, which if you get spawn or hell damage is actually okay, but for middle, it's rough. But I promise you the struggle is worth it due to the knock-on effect it has on the final encounter. And speaking of, let's move on to the star of the show, Koregos Fractured in Time. In order to reach the final encounter, you need to make your way through a brand new transition that is accessible via a new portal in the center of the map, and at the end awaits a brand new encounter. First off, I want to preface that this fight is seriously something else. It's truly one of the coolest boss fights ever, mainly because of one specific thing: time travel. Yup, this fight is all about time travel and learning information from the future, bringing it back into the past and changing the outcome of your new future, give or take 5 times, depending on how much damage you do to the boss, which is so freaking cool. So let's break it down into stages. At its longest, this fight can consist of up to 5 timelines, and with each timeline reset, your team gets a rally flag. So think of it as 5 mini encounters all blended together into one. So let's tackle each timeline one by one. Starting with timeline number 1, the first thing you'll notice about this encounter is that all 3 of the previous bosses are back, and the objective for some of these timelines is to destroy each and every one of them for good. Not the first one, however. Timeline number 1 is purely used for gathering information, which we can then exploit in timeline 2. So here's how to get that. Shortly after the encounter begins, Koregos will randomly choose 2 players in the fire team to be banished, which appears as a new debuff on the top of your screen, which if you let it fall to 0 will end up killing you. So to get rid of your banishment, you have 2 options. One is to collect one of 4 Vex cubes that spawn on the floor next to Koregos, and the other is to enter one of the 3 triangular portals on the side. The way to know which of these methods you ought to do is based on whether this giant crystal in the middle is pointing at an open portal or not. Take this example here. Myself and Kiwi both become banished. I glance at the open portal to my right, verify that the crystal in the distance is not pointing at it, which therefore means that I must go into middle and collect a Vex cube. In this next example, myself and Frezzy both become banished, but because the nearby crystal is pointing at the open portal, the 2 of us must enter. And the way I like to do callouts for this is by announcing either good or bad, depending on if the selected pair of players is due to enter a portal or not. So if bad, collect a cube, if not, enter the portal. Koregos will banish all 6 players in turn, and when it's time for the correct pair of players to enter their portal, there's 2 things they need to do. One is to have one of them collect the nearby temporality buff, and the other is to defeat the Cyclops at the end, freeing them in the process and allowing them to leave the room back into middle. The inside room players will also have to kill a Cyclops. Think of it as a 2-way lock, but because we're in the first timeline and we're not going to be dealing any boss damage, feel free to use your supers on the Cyclopses. You'll get a rally flag at the start of timeline 2 anyway. Once the portal players return, have the player who collected the buff physically stare at the giant crystal in the middle, and they should be prompted with a new interact function which, when performed, smashes open the crystal. Do this and allow the worldline stability timer to tick all the way down. However, when the bar reaches about 30% left, make sure you laser focus on the 3 chronon canisters within the middle of the arena, and take note of the color inside. And after that, you'll be greeted by a new message, Worldlines Fracture Around You. This is your sign that you've completed timeline number number 1, and it's time to begin work on timeline number 2. Timeline number 2 plays out exactly the same, and I mean exactly the same as timeline number 1. The same order of banishment will occur because you are quite literally repeating history itself. The difference here is that you have information. Information in the form of the correct chronon color, which in this example is white. So also at your earliest convenience, you need to locate the white canister on the outer area of the map and interact to align chronons to white. How do we spawn them? Well, inside the portal rooms, after all 6 players have gotten rid of their banishment, a named imp swarm will spawn, which once killed will spawn a boss level wyvern in the middle arena. And killing this wyvern will drop 4 chronons that match the color you previously aligned to. Your job now is to take these chronons and deposit them into the nearby hourglass, and once full, break the diamond at the bottom to start the next phase of the timeline, the minigame phase. Breaking this diamond will initiate a small-scale minigame inside the open portal room that must be completed in order for you to progress the encounter. And because our very first encounter of the raid was Epoptes, our first minigame is Epoptes, and the goal here is to kill him. So to do so, have at least 2 people enter the room after breaking the diamond. One of them grabs buff and should stand within the light projected by Epoptes' shield, and then the job of the other player is to interact with the tiny Vex cubes on top of each of the 3 accelerator rings. And the point is, one of these cubes will destabilize Epoptes' shield and allow the buff player to break it. So hit all 3, then the buff player breaks the shield, making it possible to damage Epoptes. So kill him and return to the main area. Once you're here, the buff player should once again interact with the crystal to smash it open, but the key difference now is that because Epoptes is dead, non-buff players are able to shoot the inside of it and fully destroy the crystal, which will now trigger the start of the DPS phase. The amount of DPS time you get is determined by how full your worldline stability meter is. The more it has left, the longer your damage. And managing to complete the minigame and prerequisite steps relatively quickly usually results in around 30 to 40 seconds of damage. So what should you use? Again, Finality's Augur with Mint is great, but Parasite also works too. Just make sure to use a solar holster mod on your boots. Damage will conclude once the worldline stability runs out, but again, make sure to take a quick glance at the chronon canisters when it's at roughly 30% and note down the color as you're damaging the boss. And once you're done, we head straight into timeline number 3. Timeline number 3 is the same again, but requires 2 things to happen first. 1, because Epoptes has been weakened by the destruction of his inner crystal, any of the players who defeated him during his minigame in the previous timeline can now instantly damage him inside the main arena. So make sure you do that and kill him once again. The player who scores the killing blow will be granted a temporality buff, which again must be used to smash open the crystal, with non-buff players destroying the inner component. This time, doing so will not start damage because we now have a second crystal which is tied to another raid boss minigame, and this time it's Agraios, because you guessed it, we did the actual Agraios encounter second. So after Epoptes is dead again and his crystal is destroyed, do banishment and chronons like normal, making sure to align the correct color chronon from the previous timeline, and once you break the diamond, the Agraios minigame begins. For Agraios, this one is the easiest of them all. Simply send 2 people in, one grabs buff and the other does not, and the buff player reads a set of 3 dots in a line beneath the boss, where one of the dots is glowing white. Call this dot to your teammate, have them break it, then repeat for the remaining 2 dots, then kill the boss, return, smash open the crystal, and destroy the inside core. If you're with a competent group, it's highly likely that you send him to final stand on this DPS phase, skipping timeline 4 entirely, because, surprise surprise, technically all of timeline number 5 is final stand. But on the off chance you don't, here's how to carry out timeline number 4. Timeline number 4 behaves the same way that timeline 3 did, but this time you can kill 2 bosses at the start, break 2 crystals instead of just 1, and then initiate the final minigame, which for us is Iatros. Inside here, the goal is to break the 2 floating boxes at 4 charges of diastole, exactly like how it works in the real encounter. And the good thing here is that you don't need any buff to shoot. Anyone can do it, and you need to complete 3 total rounds of box breaking. However, there are only 2 per round, so it's not too hard, and after the 3rd is done, kill Iatros and return to the middle, smash open his crystal, break the inner part, and damage starts once again. Rather than damage taking place in middle, Koregos will now teleport to the outside of the arena on the upper platform near the white chronon line. And this time we're playing what I like to call the Koregos minigame. Here, split your team into 3 groups of 2, one on left, middle, and right. And then you are on a timer, so quickly step on the buff plates and begin damaging the boss. Again, Finality's Augur is massive here, but eventually one section of the arena will be walled off and a crystal will spawn inside. So like usual, have your buff player smash it open, then their non-buff partner can eliminate the inside portion. After that, the game will rotate who has the buff, so you may need to do some quick switching around. I like to call out buff plus location and redistribute any duplicates, and keep repeating this process of damage and crystal breaking until you send him to final stand. Once Koregos is sent, he immediately resets the timeline into the final one, timeline number 5. Timeline number 5 is your last opportunity to deal damage to the boss. If you fail here, you wipe and are reset all the way back to timeline number 1 and must start over. But the good thing is, this part is really simple. Start the fight by killing the yellow bar harpy in the middle, then the portal behind it will open, and immediately as you step through, you'll be presented with a climbing parkour challenge, and Koregos will instantly banish 4 out of the 6 fire team members. And it's down to these 4 players to interact with the central Vex cubes above each platform to both spawn the next platform and get rid of their banishment. So make sure to take turns and have everyone get rid of it. Then once you're at the top, Koregos will immediately allocate a temporality buff to some players and spawn in 3 giant crystals, one to the left, one behind you, and one to the right. So do the usual smashing and breaking, then damage begins, and hopefully you get the job done right there and then. This fight has an incredible amount of moving parts, and it's seriously one of the coolest encounters ever. Well done, Rad Team, you guys really cooked with this one. My best advice when learning this encounter is to take things one timeline at a time, like I've done with how I structured this portion of the guide, and eventually it'll click, despite seeming pretty complicated initially. But with that, we have reached the end of the guide. I hope you enjoyed and found the guide useful, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps to support the channel. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.